Pocket Network is allowing to have decentralized RPC infrastructure. So obviously, I think this is one of the, right now I think most apps are still using Infura or other centralized endpoints, and Pocket Network is here to change this. And she will today explain to us what we can learn from actually Web2 marketing initiatives to build a strong brand in Web3. I think that's definitely something that has been kind of, I guess, underappreciated in Web3. We have been always on the forefront in technology, but in terms of adoption and driving like brand value, that is something where I think a lot can be learned from Web2. So thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm not going to really talk to you about Pocket Network. If anybody does want to know about Pocket Network, I will bore you endlessly after the talk. What I want to talk to you about today is Web3 marketing. I want to open up, actually, we were going to do a quiz, but instead I'm just going to ask you, what first comes to mind when I say the words Web3 marketing? What associations do you have? Yep. Pardon? Yeah. Yeah.
Referral links.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Yeah. So there's some really nice words that come through around community and ecosystem usually. There's a lot around mechanisms. Typically mechanisms that trigger primal emotions around fear and greed. They're very strong emotions. They elicit a very strong response. I also tend to hear hype. There's a lot of hype, pump and dump. There's a lot of kind of that idea of empty promises, overpromise. A lot of marketing jargon, exclamation marks, emojis, not a lot of substance always. I think in some ways, in my opinion, Web3 marketing has a bit of a brand problem. I don't think we've done a great job of explaining what it can be or how we leverage the strengths. And I wanted to just share some thoughts, open a conversation, hear what you guys think. If we go to the next 2 slides. This is why I think it's really important. So almost every failed startup has a product. What they don't have is enough customers. And this, to me, is the job of marketing. And you can sub out startup with project. You can sub it out with Web3. You know, we as an industry need to get better at telling our stories, at understanding our end users, at creating immersive, engaging moments of connection where they can learn about us and get involved with us. Or we will carry on into the next cycle selling to each other, riding waves of excitement that don't necessarily build the substance they need underneath in order to build enduring brands, looking for quick dopamine hits and you know, those big surges, the big spikes. I think there is a lot that we can take from existing practice. I don't think we have to start again. I think there's a lot that we have that is uniquely strong that we can leverage in order to do this actually better than any Web2 company can, better than any centralized brand can. And I want to tease out some of my opinionated opinions and invite anybody who has a reaction to please come and talk to me afterwards. Or ask Q&As at the end. So let's go to the next one. I spent a decade working in global brand management, brand strategy. I worked with brands in Unilever, Diageo, predominantly B2C. I then spent a decade building B2B brands. So I built 2 companies in Asia, one in Mongolia, one in Singapore. We exited both of those, and then I fell down the rabbit hole into Web3, and I've been here for the last 3 to 4 years with a little bit of tech startup thrown in there as well. And in Web2, like, honestly, my job was simple. It was pretty boring in a lot of ways. Like, it was gradual. It was rigorous. It was very clearly defined. I would try to move percentage points around the 5 percentage point thing. So I might have an objective for the year that was to move a specific audience in a specific relationship with my brand from aware to considering to converting to evangelizing, by maybe 5 percentage points, and that would link back to a business objective. I would have clear metrics. It would all start with the customer or the consumer. I would spend endless hours learning, like your best stalker. I would know what you liked, what you read, what you watched, what you cared about, your psychographics, your demographics. I would know whether something was on vogue, whether you were into puppies this season, you know. We would get to know you inside out because that's what it takes to have a meaningful relationship with someone. You know, you can trigger primal emotions with another person and you may not see them the next morning. You can build ongoing relationships, you can build shared experience, shared memories, shared territory, and then that can be something that endures for a much longer period of time. So this is what we did. We had a lot of tools at our disposal. So like I mentioned, we did research panels, we could A/B test everything, we concept tested everything. I had brand metrics that would tell me where everybody was in relation to my brand. I could see which of my messages had transferred into your minds. Because ultimately, what your brand is, there's lots of definitions, but one of the ones I like best is it's what they say about you when you're not in the room. It's what they say you are, not what you say you are. It's the impression that you create in the mind of your consumer through a combination of tangible and intangible factors, which, if properly measured or properly managed, drives business value. So it's this complex thing. And a lot of these tools aren't really available in Web2 yet. We're starting to see more of the online analytics coming through. We're yet to see a lot of the audience insight becoming available. A lot of it is very labor intensive. It's one-on-one calls. It's constructing your own research groups. There are people trying to emerge to address some of this. But what we did get was tokens. So we took the party of 5-year-olds and we threw in a big candy bomb and everybody went crazy. Like we introduced an emotional hijack. You know, does anybody here have kids? Have you ever found yourself wanting to bribe your children? Yeah, because it's really effective, right? You tidy your room and you can watch TV. You help out in the house and I'll give you your pocket money. Extrinsic emotion is incredibly powerful. But when you introduce extrinsic emotion to an intrinsic game, you change the game. You're not playing the same game anymore. You know, you are suddenly, you know, the emotion overrides. It kind of triggers a part of our brain that overrides. Because who doesn't want to get rich quick? Like, hands up, who doesn't want to get rich quick? Who wants to do it the slow way? Really? Oh, come on, Senad, I know that's not true. But yeah, this is, I think, one of the major differences for me in Web3 marketing versus Web2. It's very powerful, but it's also, we've got to acknowledge that it has shifted the game and we need to adapt how we market in order to leverage the strengths of that while avoiding some of the pitfalls. This is the latest Yarn video. They do a brilliant job for what it's worth. They, I think, really invest the energy into understanding their audience. They live in the minds of their audience. They create these beautiful, very highly produced pieces of content that then get reshared. But I just love this because next 100x right there. Because we don't get out of bed for 10x. Like, we don't get out of bed for 2x. 10% growth? I mean, what? We have these really massive expectations. Like we are surging. We want 100x. We want these quick spikes. We want to drive forward. And we have levers that are like pulling a nuclear lever when it comes to marketing because they can supercharge this. They talk about the literal Wild West. So I was in Mongolia during the mining rush. I have kids and I've seen them chase those piñata candies at parties. You know, there is this energy that is palpable, that is exciting. I felt it in crypto the first time I came in. But it's also, you know, mining booms leave devastation behind them. They're not really great for sustainable growth, typically. And I think there's something that we need to be mindful of as we evolve as an industry. So some of the big differences I see, when you start playing a token game, you inevitably have effectively a B2C component. But if you want to actually build a sustainable business, if you want to build folks' finance, you have to onboard your users, you have to message them, you have to create narratives. So you've got these kind of hats that you're wearing all the time, where you can't just be B2B or B2C. You've got these multiple audiences that need to be balanced. Web2 marketing, I think of as being extremely user-centric. You know, we spent so much time getting into the heads of our users. Web3 marketing I see as being token-centric. Web2 marketing, for better and worse, is quite controlled. Web3 is much more distributed, or has the ability to be more distributed. And then I think also our expectations on timings and returns, like gradual versus immediate. So we've kind of focused on the token aspect of it because I think it is the biggest game changer. I think it is what has had most effect. But I think these are all impactful. These all count. I want to share just some headlines of how we think about this at Pocket Network, because it's taken me some time to get my head around how we think about it at Pocket Network. We have 3 audiences effectively. We have audience 1, which is our end user developers. To them, we need to drive awareness and consideration. We're trying to talk to them about whether they connect directly or through their RPC provider, that we will underpin your app with low cost, high uptime, and ultimate scalability, because that's what Deepen's really good at. Decentralizing infrastructure is really hard. So if you're a gateway, you don't need to do that yourself. You can decentralize through our infrastructure by building on top of it. We'll be opening permissionless gateways by hopefully end of Q2. We're deploying our new protocol using a modular stack with Celestia. And at that point, anybody will be able to build on top. Right now, we have 2 gateways. We should have 10 by the end of the year. And our proposition to them is really kind of boosting their service with what Deepen does really well without them having to actually build all of that decentralized infrastructure. They can use ours. We've served over 390 billion relays over 3 years on mainnet. It's robust, it's battle tested. But then we also have to find ways to package our narratives up in ways that are easier for our broader audience to consume. So we have to be able to tell stories that take what we kind of often forget is complex to most people, and we've got to make them digestible and understandable. And each of those, it comes back to this, everything in marketing for me is who do you want to talk to, what do you need to say to them, and how are you going to say it? And ultimately, every single marketing plan should answer those questions, and it should answer them in a level of granularity and detail. This is obviously a summary slide. We also think about that balance between central and distributed, because we're a DAO. So I work at the foundation. Ultimately, I'm answerable to the DAO. We have an awesome governance model. We have an amazing community that are very engaged. In fact, most of our big protocol innovations have come out of our community. And we have given a lot of thought to this concept of minimum viable consistency. So, you know, I think that if you are Ethereum and you're the first one out there, then you can fully decentralize the definition of your brand, and everybody has their own version of it, and it coheres over time. I think increasingly that becomes hard. There needs to be enough of a definition. I don't believe distributed means leaderless. I think there needs to be enough clarity that what you end up building over time is a brand rather than a mess. So we have an element of definition, setting the strategy, defining the user, leading that definition piece. And then we iterate collectively and ongoing, involving the community. We have people who pick up sockets and bounties, which are permissionless. And then the contributors, it's more of an earned position. They come into the DAO. And then we've got our community hubs where they're taking those messages out into local markets, translating, running local communities, organizing events. Next slide. So what? I really wanted to make this not just me talking to you about marketing, but actually things that are practical that you can maybe use and take with you. Next slide, sorry. Oh. There we go. I thought there was no so what. I guess the biggest so what is just to do the boring stuff. Web3 is super exciting, and there is huge opportunity and there's huge potential. But it's also really important to do the boring stuff, to be rigorous about who you're talking to do as much research as you can, to understand your audience, whether you're B2C or B2B. I got told by someone very wise in DevRel when I first joined Web3, devs hate being marketed to. I don't think that's true. I just think they don't like being marketed to badly. I think it's about understanding your audience and crafting those stories and making sure that you message in the right way for that audience. And that for me is audience research. Define minimum viable consistency, but do leverage your community because that is really powerful. And it's something, in my mind, that if we can use our communities to not just do gamified retweets, but to actually execute the brand experiment in their local markets, localize your content for that local market, then we can experiment faster, we can learn faster, and we can scale faster than any centralized company out there. And ultimately, just, it's a really hard job, but you've got to map and manage that balance between all of those different audiences. Because on the next slide, I think the risk is that if we allow ourselves to become too guided by the stuff that is delivering the very visible, very obvious results in the short term, and we don't shore that up with the substance and the meaningful equity, those meaningful relationships, then we end up with castles out of sand. And when the next cycle comes in, it will wash it all out. So it's about this, for me, it's about this balance of harnessing the strengths that we bring as a sector and kind of making sure that we don't forget some of the fundamentals that have been learned over centuries. I mean, I worked in the drinks industry. I am part of a machine that has made you anchor pretty much every primal emotion that you have: stress relief, celebration, love, excitement, joy, to a substance that is slightly poisonous. If you can't imagine a birthday, or if you think about a birthday and there's booze in it, it's proof of the power of marketing. So I think taking those as we go. I think that is it. If anybody does want to know about POKT, if anybody is curious about getting involved, we are going on to Mocha Testnet next month, so we will have dev bounties coming up. We have marketing bounties and contribution parts already available. I'm Adrienne Ads on Telegram, Twitter, Discord. I'm very boring. Same name everywhere, so if anybody wants to connect, that's how you can find me. And then lastly, because I've been talking about extrinsic motivations, I also advise a startup called Telnel that's based in Lisbon. They are starting to try to fill that gap on audience research by building scalable audience insight. So if you have opinions, you may as well get paid for them. Get paid $10 to answer less than 5 questions from established projects and innovative startups. We will also, or they will also be pushing out some public goods surveys. If you're willing to share your opinion, they'll be open sourcing the results of those, so we as an industry can become more user-centric and more audience aware. Any questions?
So obviously what you've been talking about, it takes a lot of time to really understand your customer. So how do you think in regards to weighing it off against the speed of an airdrop versus doing the proper work? Like at what point do you actually, or how do you think about that weigh-off?
Yeah. You've got to do both. So for me, I think of it almost as waves. So we our token, 15x'd over the last 3 months. There is the desire to tell those narratives and to see those results, and it makes a massive difference for everyone. It's a utility token, so it affects the economics of our platform as well. But you've got to then shore it up. So we map out our 3 different audiences. We have a content calendar where we make sure we're addressing each of them. Because if all I did was tell great stories, which we can do, I can tell you great stories about what we're doing, I can sell you the dream, I can talk about the vision, but unless I'm then also going out and marketing to developers and helping them understand why it's a good idea to use POKT for their IPC, or I'm talking to gateway businesses and telling them why they should plug into us, then we'll get to the end of that and I'll have a lot of people that will end up feeling very disappointed. So it's both, you've got to do all of it. They're useful mechanisms, they serve a purpose, but you've got to then shore it up.
Let's imagine that I have a product I'm working on, and I want to launch it and get some hype. So can you give me some advices? How can I promote it? Yeah.
So I have a ton of questions. Who do you want hyped? Do you want your end user hyped, or are you just looking for general hype?
I think like my product is really depend on end users. So if I have a big number of end users, then I can get more number of B2B clients. Yeah. So the first one is B2C sector.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, I think it depends very much on the intricacy of your project. I will give you more detail of an answer if you want to talk to me afterwards. But, I mean, there are tried and tested mechanisms in Web3 around building your community, finding your early evangelists, creating that kind of core of people who vibe with what you're saying, sharpening your message, testing your message, pitching every day, talking to customers, getting feedback. And then there's the other things, you know, the hinting at future tokens, the inserting little bits of gamification so people kind of know that there's a game being played that might result in something, you know, triggering some of the primal emotions, and using that to bootstrap your early testers. It is a great way to get people in, to get people using, to get feedback, partnerships, social media. You know how it's played.
Yeah, I have almost the same ideas, but the problem in social media that I don't I'm not so popular, and it's a bit hard to tell about your product to different people. In Twitter they don't see it.
Yeah.
This information. That's why social media is something really hard to use.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I think it's all good points that you said. Yeah, conferences, hackathons also is a good idea.
Yeah.
To talk and develop the product.
Yeah.
So we can get partnerships from this.
Yeah. I think partnerships and communities, like very often if you can find a community that vibes with what you're trying to build, and you can kind of do it in that enclave. But yeah, it's really, really, really hard. I've attempted to found a business. I have utmost respect for anybody that is insane enough to try to create something where there was nothing. I think it is a noble endeavor, but a very difficult one.
I'm just wondering how much and how are you involved with community management? Because I also worked as a marketer in Web3 space, but I found that the quality of the community has a huge impact, because if you work as a developer and the community is not nice, or as an investor, it can really like scare away people. And I've noticed the impact like a few toxic people can have on a community and a whole project. So I'm just wondering how you deal with that.
So I don't have to. We have a head of community. But actually, I totally, it resonates very much. I think throughout crypto, like if you look at projects like Solana and you just look at the people talking about it on Twitter, you'd have a very different impression of the project than if you actually go to a Solana conference and you talk to the devs that are involved in it. Like there is a disconnect very often between the broader audience that are hyped for the upside of the token and the people that are actually involved in the core utility of the product. And I think that's always a challenge. But fortunately, that one's not mine.
Which project do you think in Web3 does the best marketing outside of Pocket Network?
Well, I actually wouldn't say Pocket Network yet. That's an interesting one. I like Jörn's content. I think they've taken a relatively dry space and they've really understood their audience and they've done that really well. There are some of the NFT ones, I think, that have done that very well. The name has just gone out of my head, but you know the ones that did those fake job interviews with crypto influencers? What was the name of that project? Really good social content. It will come back to me. Deep was actually asking me the same question. I sent him a list.
Mike Busters?
Pardon?
Mike Busters?
I don't think it was that.
They made it 10 years ago with fake interviews.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, more or less in the same concept you are talking, so.
Oh, nice. No, I'll have a look. It was, the name is on the edge of my consciousness and it's just not coming.
Yeah, we will post in the Telegram group.
Honestly, I don't think we are yet, as a sector, doing enough good marketing.
I agree. Yeah.
So I hope next time you ask me that question, I'll have more answers.
I think something is also kind of telling for me why we do not have enough good marketing is that I think the companies, I would say, have the biggest brand value. And I would say, for me, it's probably Uniswap as a DApp has the biggest brand value. This is coming from being an early mover. And I think I would like, I don't know, right now also no project really comes to my mind, but if anyone has one, like a project that became the market leader in a field, like we're not early mover because they actually did good marketing, or that they excelled in a space like where it was not just being early or offering relatively good tech. Yeah,
I've got one. Alchemy. Yeah. So Alchemy took on Infura, and they've killed it. They are very developer centric. You feel like they have a really strong core around just find and solve developer problems. And then they've built out their product set beautifully to kind of continue that journey. Their tutorials are so effortless. Their developer experience is just beautiful. I think they've done a really good job. And they're in our sector.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely like, it's a very good example. Infura was de facto a monopoly at some point, and
90% of Relays went through Infura back in 2018-19.
yeah, and nowadays Alchemy is clearly leading and also much faster expanding. So I think probably the wallet space is also, I would say MetaMask is of course still the number one wallet, I guess, in total installations, but there are a lot of competitors like Zerion and others that take significant market share. And I think kind of Web3, but centralized exchanges, I think there has been a lot of shifts over the years. Like I remember when Gnosis was launching, Poloniex was the number one exchange. It was very important to be on Poloniex. Nowadays it belongs to Justin and no one cares about Poloniex anymore. So I think there also were, I guess, many different factors leading to that, but I think marketing definitely was also a very important part to that.
I think the other thing I would say about this is that we also need to, I mean, everybody here probably knows this, we need to stop trying to sell to each other. We need to find ways to tell stories to a broader audience. Like for me, the next cycle should be about trying to drive mainstream adoption. So we have to remember that we are in a tiny little echo chamber.
That's a great way to end the meetup. Thank you very much.